Welcome. Thank you so much for joining us for the Oregon Toll Program Equity and Mobility Advisory Committee video. I am Jessica Stanton, your facilitator for the upcoming workshop that we're having on August 25th. We thought it would be a good idea to walk through all the wonderful materials that we've sent out to you. So when you're doing the upcoming meeting, which will be a workshop, we want you to focus on this discussion question. What is your reaction to the key takeaways in the research document?
So we'll go through 9 key takeaways, and you're thinking, there's supposed to be takeaways, Garrett. Why are there 9? But, we love research, so our apologies for that. So the first key takeaway here is that tolls could be a more equitable way of funding transportation compared to the status quo with things like gas tax or vehicle registration, or in many other states, sales tax is used, or even income to pay for transportation. To understand whether the toll program is advancing equity, analysis should identify the percentage of household incomes that low-income drivers will pay as compared to higher-income drivers. And so an example, just research that's pretty close to here up there in King County, Washington, where they were looking at paying for more bridges and other transportation improvements. They polled folks, and as you can see here on the screen, lower income individuals preferred tolling rather than taxes to pay for that new infrastructure. Now, as you see to the right side of the chart, that flips or is pretty even once you get up to those higher income levels. But lower income individuals that were polled preferred tolls to additional sales taxes or other types of taxes.
And our next takeaway suggests that people of all incomes travel at all times. But the research suggests that middle and higher income people are more likely to travel at the busiest times and thus are more likely to pay tolls or congestion charges. Basically, it just means that we understand the people on the road at the busiest times with the highest charge of tolls tend to be middle and higher income people.
The third key takeaway is that the impact on workers who are receiving a lower pay is a concern. And some of the reasoning behind that is that a lot of times, if you're in a lower wage job, you don't work the 8 to 5 office hours. So you're either getting up in the morning or going into work later at night. And a lot of these off-peak travel, as it's called in the transportation world, is when transit isn't offered, especially as you get more in the suburban and rural areas. And so the only way, if you are somebody who's earning that low wage, for you to get to your job site on time and at your second or third shift schedule is in a car. And so that's just really that having a car is needed to maintain your job.
So our next key takeaway should be fairly familiar that electronic payment can be a barrier. So congestion pricing, as you all know, a lot of it relies on electronic or cashless technology, and households that do not have access to credit cards or bank accounts or cannot afford large deposits may not be able to set up accounts, which may limit their use. So we want to keep in mind that electronic payment can be a barrier.
Another barrier is the cost and process to obtain a transponder. And so again, a lot of the way that electronic toll technology work is that you have some type of physical either device or sticker within your car. A lot of toll programs charge you not only to buy the transponder, but to maintain it each month or each year. Toll programs many times will offer discounts for people who have toll transponders, because then it cuts down on the billing and the processing and like capturing license plates and sending fees to folks. And so as the system is being set up, this needs to be kept in mind, because this can be a barrier to people with lower incomes to maintain that, or folks who have been historically marginalized and excluded by government. And so if government's coming to you with, now put this in your car, we want to track you, there rightfully can be distrust for that.
Our next takeaway talks about tolling to support greater transit will help, but it will not solve it all. So in the quote below, it says the fundamental issue is that spending toll revenue on transit, even buses, solves the wrong problem. Funneling revenue to transit does not address the fundamental concern that pricing harms poor drivers. So I think keeping in mind that there may be benefit to support greater transit, it solves part of the problem, but it doesn't solve all of the problems for individual low-income drivers.
The next key takeaway is to address the financial impact to people and workers who are experiencing low income. Toll programs commonly offer credits or rebates. So a few examples of that would be to provide a credit directly to an account at the start at each month or some type on an annual basis, to provide free transponders, which the cost of those is relatively low. A lot of times it's under $20 or even less than that. But that could be an incentive to provide. There's also systems where after you've taken a number of trips, let's say you're like a local resident and you're going over a toll facility, you can actually be credited back to your account once you hit a certain number of trips per month.
Our next key takeaway is that the Oregon legislature passed a law, House Bill 3055, that requires ODOT to develop a method for establishing income-based tolls. So income-based exemptions or rates are not common in congestion pricing toll projects, although there are a few studies underway. When considering exemptions, the trade-off is that there will be less money for programs or investments to advance equity.
The next key takeaway is that the offering cash options for payment or setting policies about the toll rate and enforcement are other ways. And so a few key examples we've seen from other places are you can offer additional time to pay a toll bill without incurring additional fines and paying that back, or to establish toll rate price or caps or floors to on the future rate setting process. So we'll get into that a little bit later, I think. So now I'll walk through some examples that are comparative to our regional tolling project and two examples that are comparative to the I-205 area, the smaller tolling project. So we're looking here at Los Angeles. This is a regional scale. As you can see there in the blue and the pink, these are high occupancy toll lanes. So there's some tolled lanes and there's untolled lanes on the expressway as you go through. Los Angeles is unique in that LA Metro is the tolling and the transit provider. And so a couple of things that they do though for low income riders. They offer a one-time $25 credit when you open up your Fast Track to your transponder account. They do a really unique program between the transit agency and the tolling where you can earn credits on your for tolls after you made 16 one-way trips during peak hours. You can earn a $5 credit that you can be used for tolling or transit. And additionally, they use they waive the monthly account maintenance fee for transponders for qualifying individuals. Miami, this is another regional scale example. You can't see the full of it here, but this spans a pretty decent size of Miami's downtown area. And these are, again, some lanes are tolled and some lanes are untolled on the highway. So they offer roughly a $5 credit on your transponder when you first get it, which basically then covers the cost of purchasing that transponder. And the use of cash to load onto your transponder can be done at nearly 5,000 retail locations across the state. Moving now to Hampton Roads and our kind of smaller segment toll examples. As you can see here on the screen, there's a couple of bridges and roads kind of leading to those bridges that are tolled facilities. They have a kind of a credit rebate account where local residents, after so many trips per month, get a 75-cent discount, which is about half the toll rate back. So it's about a 50% credit. And they also do not require a minimum balance on the transponder, which a lot of places do. In Louisville, you can see here on the screen, highlighted in green, are 3 bridges that were replaced and then tolled, kind of all lanes in each direction. And so Louisville did that piece that we were talking about in the key takeaways, where they assessed the economic impacts on what would advance equity the most. If you provided an exemption, discount, or took the toll revenue and reinvested into transit and transportation options. And they found that the latter would actually advance equity the most for those projects and in that community.
So we've walked through a plethora of research information about affordability and low income for tolling. Just want to kind of cap that before we move on to the next section. So during the workshop, we will also have a second question for you, and that will be, based on your knowledge of your community and the research, are the policy or strategy options that are these the policy or strategy options that should be advanced by EMAC? How can they be strengthened? What's missing? So keep that in mind as we walk through this next section, which will be the draft preferred policy and strategy options around affordability.
Excellent. And again, as you see the gold background, know that's EMAC is the leader. So we're always open to, these are your words. So feel free to craft them as you see fit. So the first set of policy options are around the toll project analysis and development of an equitable toll program. So the first is to analyze impacts to affordability by percentage of household income. The second is to analyze the trade-offs between exemptions, credits, or discounted rates based on income versus collecting the toll revenues and reinvesting them into equity and mobility strategies. And the third is that when you're establishing the definition for low income for the income-based toll rate, to include a range that encompasses more than the federal definition of poverty, because we know that folks that are experiencing low income aren't at a set rate throughout the entire year, and that they'll people that travel above and below that federal poverty rate.
Our next policy option is considering toll rate setting and future oversight. So that would look like ODOT should implement an income-based toll program that is progressive in nature, meaning that higher income drivers will pay a larger share of percentage of household income than lower income drivers. Or ODOT will produce annual reports for the Oregon Transportation Commission on a set of measures that track the progress of policies and strategic investments.
A few more in this same bucket that Jessica was just explaining, that when setting the toll rates, consider setting price caps on increases to the lower income toll rate, and or build into the system where voices from equity framework identified communities are included in that future decision-making process. And finally, to establish a monitoring and communication system to understand whether the actions taken to address affordability in the planning stage, where we're at now, are actually reaching the needs of low income drivers once implemented.
And our next policy option, it establishes geography-based toll rates. So provide a credit system or discounted rate to lower income drivers who are local residents of the I-205 area and the time in between when the I-205 tolling starts and the regional I-5 and I-205 toll system, the regional mobility pricing project, comes online.
Switching now to strategy options, the first one up is to design a toll system that recognizes historic and current barriers and plans to address them through the following actions. So providing a cash-based option for paying tolls, offering additional time to pay a toll bill without incurring fines, and to design the system to be clear and easy to use for everyone, including non-English language speakers.
More options include design a toll system that recognizes historic and current barriers and plans to address them in the following way. Transponders should be free or should come preloaded with credits to cover the cost of the purchase. set a no or low minimum balance requirement for loading or maintaining transponders, design and implement an interoperable system to accept transactions from transit, parking, and other modes of travel.
This next one is about being specific about transit investments with toll revenue. Building off of the research, we saw that funneling revenue to transit does not address the fundamental concern that pricing harms poor drivers. And so that transit investments should really be specified and informed by the needs and strengths of equity framework identified communities.
And that brings us to what will be our robust breakout room discussion after the affordability workshop that we have during our upcoming meeting. And so now we will take those wonderful conversations that you will have had in your breakout groups, and we'll spend, a lot of time reporting out to everyone and really finding, what are the gems, what are the common themes, and what ultimately you as EMAC members would like to identify as preferred strategy, policy and strategy options to go into your recommendations.
Thank you so much.
Thank you. Have a good night.